Welcome to Writer's Digest Presents. Hosted by the editors of Writer's Digest, this monthly podcast features conversations with writing and publishing experts whose insights will help ignite your creative vision, hone your skills, build your platform, and get your work out into the world.
Hello, writers. I am Michael Woodson, and welcome to Writer's Digest Presents, and welcome to the first episode of 2026. And we are starting this year at the end by talking all about writing endings. I thought about this subject because we spent a lot of time talking about the importance of preparing our first 10 pages to be as good as possible when we're querying, because those first 10 pages are really pivotal in attracting an agent's attention. And that's totally true, and you should worry about that. But I do think it's just as important to consider maintaining that interest throughout the entire manuscript all the way to the end. And in my experience, landing the ending is pretty difficult. It's very stressful. You want to leave on a high note. And there's a lot of ways to do it well and right, and we want to help you do that. So today I'm in conversation with Allegra Martschenko. Allegra is a literary agent at Bookends Literary Agency. And we talk all about what makes for successful endings, how to approach an ending based on what you've written up until that point, pitfalls to avoid. We talk about everything when it comes to endings. I learned a lot from chatting with Allegra for this episode, and I hope you will too. So without further ado, Writer's Digest presents Allegra Martschenko. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you don't mind, why don't you give our listeners just a little bit of an intro?
Hello, listeners. I'm Allegra Martschenko. I'm a literary agent at Bookends Literary Agency, where I represent speculative fiction in the adult, crossover, and young adult age ranges. And I do speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, everything sort of within that category, within that pool, with a focus on marginalized authors.
I'm so excited to have you today. And we are talking about something that I'm particularly interested in because I think it's a difficult thing to achieve well. And in the industry, you might disagree with me, and I'd be interested if you do. We spend a lot of time about the importance of a really strong first 10 pages of a manuscript. And for a lot of reasons, and as we should. I mean, if you have a really strong first 10 pages, likely readers are going to want to keep reading, and agents certainly want to keep reading. And we spend so much time talking about the beginning. I worry we don't spend enough time talking about fleshing out and having successful endings. So as we get started, I am just curious, as both an agent and a reader, what would you say is your favorite part of a book? Is it the beginning, the middle, or the end?
I would say, this is a great question, because my answer is different for as an agent and as a reader. As an agent, I'm really, as you say, locked in on the opening of a book. Like, is it like a really compelling start to the process? Am I getting invested in the characters and the world and stuff like that? But as a reader, I think it's the 70 to 90% mark of the book is always my favorite, because you know what's happening. You've got your feet under, you've just had whatever the twist is around the midpoint. You're heading into the climax. It's just like it's a time where I find I can't put the book down. I'm turning the pages really quickly. It's when I feel most locked into the book, basically. So that's always my favorite part of the reader.
Yeah, I love when I am really vibing with a book, the middle is my favorite part because, like you said, I've been introduced to the characters. Depending on what I'm reading, likely something major has happened midway. And I, especially with a book that I'm loving, I actually really struggle with finishing them because I just don't want to, I like living in books and I really don't want them to end. So when I'm in the middle, I feel this very jubilant of, I'm past the beginning. I'm not near the end yet. And gosh, a book immediately came to mind for me where there was a twist. It wasn't a twist book, so it was particularly shocking. There was a twist at the middle, and then the second part was a different POV and was such a shock that I literally could not put the book down. And it's now my favorite book of all time. But yeah, so I'm curious. You, as you said, you represent a lot of speculative fiction, fantasy, science fiction across even within those subgenres. And I think that like bigger concepts have perhaps farther to fall if the ending doesn't land with their readers. So from your point of view, what constitutes a successful ending? And does the success of the ending or failure of the ending change your relationship with how you felt at the beginning of the manuscript?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everyone wants a satisfying an ending that feels right for the book. I would say like the endings I struggle with the most is where it feels like something has come out of left field. Like whatever we thought the main thematic part of the book is, the main conflict for the character is, that for some reason is not what the climax is all about. That is not what the ending is hitting as its major point or anything like that. And so it feels unsatisfying in that way because you think, well, what was I in? Why was I reading? Basically, what was I along for the ride for? And speculative fiction, these high concept books, it's really hard to wrap up all those loose ends because you've introduced whatever the world building is, and you've thought about how the world building impacts the character, and you have the character arcs, and you have the plot arcs or whatever it is, and somehow all of that has to come together into an ending. But I also think that there's not there are endings that are sort of deliberately unsatisfying.
Totally.
That are
Love those.
that are appropriate for the book depending on what the book type is. And there's probably like, I can think of like 3 or 4 categories of endings. There's the like, you have a standalone book, you're basically wrapping everything up neatly. You're not going to have a sequel or subsequent book and stuff like that. And so it feels like you need to give readers a sense of resolution. But then you have a series book. So say you have a duology, and the first book is really just setting us up for book 2. So you deliberately leave all these threads open so that you have a story to start with in the next book. And while that would really drive some people up the wall if it was a standalone, that's exactly what you need to do and what you want to do. Because if you wrap up everything, people are going to say, what the heck is book 2 about? Why do I need to come back and sort of talk to you? And then there are, endings that are like for those companion novels, basically. Like, again, it's like an in-between phase where you're trying to wrap up the main part of the story that it happens in book 1, but you are leaving room in the world or in just a single secondary character to try to spin off into something else. And these all are like, they're totally different approaches to the ways to end a book, but they're all right for the book because they're thinking about what the book type is, where your audience needs to follow you to next, if the themes are wrapped up in an appropriate way or left deliberately open-ended. So there's 1,000 ways to finish a book, as long as it feels like it's really keyed for that specific story.
Yeah, gosh, I love hearing it broken down like this, because I think it's really helpful for writers to hear. One, like, of course, there are endless ways to end your book and end it successfully, but recognizing the kind of book you're writing, like a really cool ending might be attractive to you that maybe doesn't fit the book itself, and you have to like sacrifice perhaps the idea of this one ending for what will work better for the book is really interesting. I also think it's interesting to think about the difference between I love an intentionally unsatisfactory ending. Like, truly, it's such a fun way to finish a book. But there is a difference, certainly, between like an open-ended ending versus like a cliffhanger. And like these like intricacies, I do think are important for writers to study when they're considering their stories.
Yeah, and I think about this a lot too, because the open-ended ending, I think, has to be in a book for which the open-endedness, say that 5 times fast, is the point of it. And I think Simon Jimenez's The Vanished Birds has an ending that haunts me because it is a happy ending. It is not a happy ending. And you step back and you realize like that was actually the whole point of everything.
Oh, that's got chills.
There's no like happy, like it's about like the colonialism of the body, like space imperialism, and you think, well, actually the whole point is that we don't solve this. We have these like personal, on the individual level relationships that we hope we can reunite with our loved ones, that we can stay with our loved ones, that we can get resolution in that sense. But it would be like antithesis to the entire thematic concept of the book if like everything was like finished in a blaze
Totally.
of glory and everyone was happy. So
Yeah.
not really spoilers for The Vanished Birds for anyone listening, but
Yeah.
like slight, it's not a happy ending, but it is an open-ended one that like only makes everything that you've just read feel so much just cohere in such
Totally.
a great, fantastic way, a really clever way.
There's this book called Company of Liars, I think by Karen Maitland, and I think it came out in like 2007 or 8, so it's been a while, and I don't know anyone who's read that. Sorry, Karen Maitland, love you. I didn't mean that. Like, I loved this book, and my husband actually recommended it to me when we first started dating, and it's kind of similar in that I think like these are books readers or our listeners should study. Like, it teeters on magical realism, but it's about and around the bubonic plague and this company of liars basically trying to survive it. And slowly throughout the book, like their lies start to unravel with like detrimental effects. And the ending made my stomach, like I had such a stomach ache at the end of it, and I was supposed to, and it was such a great open ending because there was no way, like the story was so grim that there was no like I didn't feel like there was any real way for there to be like like too much hope to feel like it was satisfactory, and there is a certain amount of like, okay, there is a concept of survival, meanwhile this other thing is happening and it's getting closer ... and that's just how it ends. And it's a standalone book, and it's the one I think about every single time I think about open endings, because I just think it's done really well. To your point, it just matched the rest of the book really well. So okay, let's say you receive a manuscript and you are really, really vibing with the opening 10 pages. As you said, as an agent, that is your favorite part of a book. So you request the full manuscript, and as you get to the end, you find the ending either isn't as successful as it could have been, doesn't hold your attention as much as the beginning does, or you immediately know a better way to end it. How do you navigate that? Like, would you still accept, like, is it a case-by-case thing? Would you still be interested in representing the author? Would you have a conversation with them?
Yeah, it's definitely case by case, because sometimes a book will start really, really strong, and I'll say, I really like this, and I think I know what this is, and I think I could represent it. And then it slowly loses me over the course of the read. And sometimes it's because the plot takes turns that I don't think are quite right. And that's actually the better scenario, because the other scenario is like something goes off the rails a bit with the craft. Like we started really early with a good sense of character, but then we lose it, and like the characters are all running into each other, or like the chronological flow doesn't seem right, or the voice gets a bit weird, or something like that. And it happens fairly often because people go so hard on the beginnings of their book. And that's when it's like, if you're getting feedback from someone, you say, can you give me feedback on the first 50 pages? Can you give me feedback on the first 100 pages? And you get this really polished first 50 or 100 pages that doesn't quite know how to continue going.
Interesting.
And that concerns me, because it doesn't necessarily inspire confidence in your ability to execute the plan. So I'm a little less likely to offer representation and say, oh, I think the ending is not so right. Can we change the ending? And hope that they say yes, and it's possible. I'm more likely to R&R a book. I'm more likely to say, I read your full manuscript, or I read part of your manuscript, and I try to be pretty transparent about how far I read, and say, I have XYZ issue. I don't know if this is what you want. Like, I don't know if this is what you think is right, but if you do revise, feel free to come back to me. I'd be very happy to read this again. And it puts the choice in their hand.
Totally.
And then the option that I said is better, which is just like, I think that the craft and the execution is really good, but there's some like just like a specific action happened that I don't think is appropriate. If I like the rest of it, I absolutely will offer representation, because I believe in your ability to execute the book. I think your craft is wonderful. It's clear that you can do this. It's just a question of like, can you write a different scene? Can you write a new scene? And I'm very upfront about my editorial requests. When I offer representation to an author, not in every case, but in most cases, I give them an edit letter when I offer them rep. And it goes through the entire book, and you can see exactly what my vision is. And if you sign with me, fantastic. We're off to the races. And if you don't sign with me, take that edit letter wherever you'd like to go with whoever you'd like to sign with and follow that vision wherever it goes. So people tend to know like very clearly what it is I'm thinking. And we spend a fair portion of our offer calls talking about my editorial vision and brainstorming back and forth. And it's all the more heartbreaking if I have a 2-hour brainstorming call and they decide to sign with someone else. But at the end of the day, like, I like your book. I'm a fan. I want to see it succeed in the world.
Totally.
I'm happy to talk about it. Wherever you end up, I'm wishing you the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any, like, how do I ask this? Like, does anything come to mind? You don't have to say titles, but like where a conversation happened and you really were in sync with sort of editorial feedback, and they actually took it and it was just simply successful. Like, I think I'm asking because I want writers to feel comfortable with feedback and killing their darlings, and like success stories of like an agent ultimately has your best interest in mind and your story's best interest in mind. So like here's a book that we talked about, and the ending, we changed the ending and it was really successful.
That's a great question. I'm looking to the side because I'm looking at my client books, because I've signed several clients that we had to do a really significant edit for. And I'm trying to think about specifically if we changed the endings in any of them.
Or maybe even like changed something else that changed the ending.
Yeah. I could probably name a couple. I have a client, Elias Cold, who wrote The Duke Steals Hearts and Other Body Parts, which is this fantastic
Great
young
title.
adult novel. So good. And Eli, I actually signed Eli for a different book. And then they presented this book to me. And I'm not going to reveal the original plot, but it was almost completely different.
Wow.
In most of its details from what we ended up taking out on submission. And it got really significant changes, like with an editor after the fact, that completely changed the ending. But Eli was just like, I always ask people, what is at the heart of your book? What are you unwilling to change, basically? And we go from there. I'm doing edits right now with a client where I said, what is at the heart of your book? And she said, it's about identity. It's about like estrangement from the homeland that you're currently living in. And I said, okay, I don't think the plot supports that at all.
Wow.
We are going to change a significant amount of the supporting cast of characters. We're going to change the speculative element in the book. We're going to, mainly the ending stays the same, but we're changing the contours of like who is even present in the ending and what the themes are. And that is going to be fine. So
that's
as long
a great
as my authors,
way to frame the conversation of like, what is most important to you? Okay, so let's achieve that.
Because everything else, the world, the plot, the characters, they're, like answers to your central question. They should be informing each other to answer this central question. And I've signed clients who I've R&R'd them. I said basically, like, I just don't think XYZ thing is working. Can you do a 100-page revision for me? I have 2 clients, I think, that did the 100-page revision, and I signed them. Not everything is going to resonate with you. Like, I want to say at the same time, you're going to receive feedback that's not right. I've given feedback to people that just like wasn't what they wanted. And that's absolutely
also valid.
Why I give it. Yeah. That's why I give it up front and I say the choice is yours. This is just my opinion. I'm not even an editor buying your book. I'm just an agent who's just trying to take it out to editors. If this isn't right for you, you know that this isn't the right editorial relationship for you. You should take this elsewhere. But I want you to know up front what I think is right for your project. And we can negotiate and have that conversation about like, I don't have all the right ideas, and sometimes my ideas are terrible, but like, am I asking the right questions to prompt my authors to come up with the right answers? Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit already, but with sort of discussing genre fiction, I think genre writers have, an added pressure of having to follow certain like tropes or rules to be considered that genre. I remember my editor Amy read a book that was pitched as a romance novel, and by the end of the book the couple weren't together anymore. And In romance, to be like considered a romance novel, you have to have a sense of a happily ever after or a happily for now. And I remember her saying like, I'm nervous for this book. I know I can already see the reader reviews and I feel badly because it's not a bad book. It's just not a romance novel, and romance readers are going to pick it up and be upset about the ending. And then on the other hand, there are books that like kind of in the same breath of us talking about intentionally open-ended or unsatisfactory endings. The like books that play with genre tropes and rules on purpose and break those rules on purpose also are really fun and can start new trends and tropes. And I'm wondering from your perspective, if you get a manuscript that has a trope that it sort of flips on its head, is that something you appreciate, or is that something that like concerns you or makes you worried about like what other like readers or editors are going to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, I like an inverted trope. I like slightly more experimental fiction.
Totally.
It tends to be a harder sell in the marketplace, but I just think when you're doing it great and you're doing it fun, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. Romance is a very specific one in that you, like, again, you really got to have that happy ending, or that happy for now, or it's not going to do well at all. Speculative fiction has a bunch more freedom because it's a really broad word. You know, it's a really broad definition of what fantasy even is or could be, or what science fiction even is or could be, or like any of the other genres that could mix with. I mean, we come up with new terms every day: romantasy, horror fantasy, just like whatever you can think of. We're coming up with these new terms. So there's a lot more freedom in there. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. Like, if the point of the book is to be a little bit dissatisfying, then if you're clever about it, go ahead and do that. But if that's not the point, like if it's like you're doing something else, or you've been really delving into a relationship or something else the whole way, and you're signaling to your readers that you're going to do this, it's hard because your reader's probably going to pick it up because it's going to be pitched a certain way, but they're not going to give you a good review, and they're not going to follow you to the next book because they're going to believe that like you betrayed their trust a little bit. But that doesn't mean don't be a bit experimental. That doesn't mean don't be unusual. Don't have some like good twist in there. It just means, like, again, think about what your book is supposed to be, what the point is. If the point is to be a little bit unusual or wild or experimental, and use that to set the rules of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate in terms of the way you approach tropes or genre conventions or anything like that.
Have you read the book or heard of the book Poppy Show by Leon A. Ross?
I haven't read it.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's magical realism. It's sort of somewhere between magical realism and speculative fiction, and it is so cool and unlike anything I'd ever read. And I recommend it. I think you'd really like it.
Yeah, I'll write that down.
Yeah, it's actually, I have it right here for our YouTube people. Isn't that such a cool cover?
It is. I was going to say, that's really gorgeous. I've written it down.
I think it's called something else in the UK. I can't remember, but it's so cool, and it breaks every single rule you can imagine. It breaks it, and I think writers could learn a lot from it too. We talked about this. You mentioned this a little bit already, so I might know your answer, but I am also curious. Like, what are some maybe like ending pet peeves for you?
Yeah, I mean, it really is the like feeling of dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
I have a general pet peeve that gets extreme when it hits the ending, is if random new elements, rules, or characters are introduced in your book. I mean, even sometimes past the like 40% mark, it feels like you're breaking the logic of your. It's like, why was this guy not in the story from the start if suddenly he's so critical at the end?
Deus Ex Machina.
It's really that is a real pet peeve for me, because I want to feel like the ending is the moment everything is collapsing in on itself. You know, like all of the threads, even the ones I didn't notice from earlier in your book, are suddenly like unfolding like dominoes, such that this is basically the exact ending that the story had to have. I really am not a fan of when like random new rules and stuff are made up along the way. along the way in a way that's like surprising to anybody. I think that's the big one, because otherwise I'm pretty flexible with endings.
That's a really good one, especially because it feels a little bit like tapping out. Like, I don't know what to. I'm gonna introduce this new thing so that I can end it. Yeah. And I think readers are smart. Like, they're gonna recognize that as like possibly a I don't want to even say failure, but just like what the author isn't as good at showing through, which is like, we're not good at everything. You know, we all have our weaknesses with creativity, but that is a really good one. For me, one of them is like, I really love, as I'm writing more and reading more, obviously, I really love like perfect pacing, whatever that means for the book. And when the pacing of the ending doesn't match or reflect how the pacing felt the whole book.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It really takes me out of it. And there's like one book in particular, and I'll tell you the title off.
Yes.
Because I don't want to be mean.
No, 100%.
Yeah. Because this book otherwise was so good. And the opening paragraph is one of the most gorgeous pieces of writing I've ever read. And this author is so brilliant. I love his other work. And I loved this book mostly. And then the last page was the ending. And it was just like a quick summary wrap up of like literally of how it ended. And it was so disappointing, because part of the joy of this particular book was that it luxuriated in its world. Like, it really took its time. It was so detailed. And the ending just felt like, I'm on deadline. I have to end this. Sort of thing.
I just ran out of word count.
Yes.
I have to
literally.
this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a big book. And I was like, I just spent a lot of time with you. Like, for this to be like a summary ending that I could have read on like in a review, truly. But so for me, a lot of it is like, if the pacing really sticks out for me right now, currently, as a reader.
Yeah. And again, it's like you're talking about really like the promises that the author has made. Have they fulfilled them?
Totally.
The promises that we made earlier with the pacing, with XYZ thing, like, does the ending fulfill those same promises?
Yeah,
if it
for sure.
doesn't, it's just like, you know, a little bit of death of the author. You want the story to stand on its own, whatever. But you also want to be able to trust the author to a certain extent.
Totally.
You want to be able to trust, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Even if I don't agree with what they do, like, I want to read more, and I know I'm going to learn something about this. Because suddenly it's just like, should I have trusted you the whole time?
Yeah.
This is the way you were going to do it, you know?
Yeah. Yes. And it stinks that the ending matters as much as it does. Because like, I just read a book that I wasn't really liking, and the ending was really, really good. And it changed my relationship with it a little bit, where I was like, okay, I can't imagine recommending this. Like, a really good ending to an otherwise mediocre book can save it, whereas like a unintentionally unsatisfactory ending to an otherwise pretty good book can like, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It can ruin the experience a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. I think it is so unfair that you have everything overshadowed at the end.
Yes, it's like a bad finale to an incredible show. It's like, well, I'm never watching that again.
Yeah, you're like, or like watch the first 4 seasons, give up after that, or something like that.
Yes. Okay, I am curious. So everything's said and done. You signed with someone, or someone signed with you, I should say. When you are trying to sell the book, how much does the ending play into your sell?
Oof, this is a daring response, but in some ways not at all.
Okay, totally.
Because I think, you know, many times editors do what agents do, which is like, did you pull this off at the first part? I'm invested enough to get to the end. That's a pretty significant thing. And do I just need to ask for a different scene at the end? That's like not editors edit books. They do.
Right.
This may shock people to learn. Editors do edit books. So it's like, as much as, and I feel like a lot of the current conversation is like, basically no one does their job anymore. Like, do editors edit books? And there's a whole separate conversation to be had about unreasonable pay and workload in the industry that makes it difficult for editors to have time to sit down and edit books. But even beyond all that, they do edit books. So if it's one of those things, I think many think like me, where it's like, if you clearly have the craft, you've got the skill, and you've got the story, and we feel like we can market this, and I just have to ask you to make a change in what actually happens, then you can sign and sell this book. You know, you can take it forward to a team, and when they say like, what is the hook for this book, what is the concept that we're selling, you don't say, here's the book from point A to point B. You know, they've got a short pitch, and it's not, here's exactly what happens at the end. So it tends to be like, why there's so much emphasis on the beginning of a book is because it really is so critical when it comes to marketability, salability, and stuff like that. It's not to say I give up if an editing isn't working. Like, I do edits with my own clients beforehand. I want the book to be in as good shape as possible. I want editors to have as few chances to say no as possible. But you also have to open up the possibility that the book you're sending out on submission is not a perfect book. And even the book that you publish is not a perfect book. And maybe 5 years from now, you would be able to write it, quote unquote, better, whatever better is. But you think, am I doing justice to the book right now? Could I get an editor to read this right now?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And sort of to wrap this up, I am curious about sort of leaving our listeners with some homework. And I was just wondering, if you had to pick 3 books for authors to study their endings, what would they be?
So honorary mention immediately again to The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. I think that was really just like in theme for what the book is. And then beyond that, I'm going to be a little bit selfish, and I'm going to talk about 3 of my own clients.
Yes, as you should.
Because this is my chance. Because and clients, if you're listening, I picked 3 basically at random.
They love all of you.
I love all of you equally. But they're different types. And so they're like, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, you know, if you have like a standalone or a companion novels or anything like that. So the first one I have is my client Anna Davis's My Keen Knife. This might be reversed in the video, which is a duology. And the ending is like, it kicks off basically the plot of book 2. The plot that you're wrangling with here extends into book 2, but like there's a major twist at the end that just like reshapes the way we think about what's going to happen in book 2. We're going into book 2 where characters who were together the whole time or might be in different locations now and like have their own threads. And so that's really compelling because the goal that's been set forth of like, it's a teenager who's killing her way to the throne, basically. She is closer to the throne than ever. You know, we're making good on that promise, but things didn't go exactly the way that you think that they, you know, that would have been ideal. And so that kicks off a whole new plot with whole new interests, but it's still in one linear story. Another one I will highlight is Sorcery and Small Magics by Mega Ducey. This is a shiny UK version. This is a 3-book series, but the book 1 has wrapped up its plot. Basically, what you're following when you go into book 2 is the central character relationship. That this is one of the slowest burn romances I have ever read in my entire life. And so don't go into this looking for a happily ever after. But the world feels so big in this book that you're setting up for the next book in a series, because you have a little bit of closure on again the central conflict of book 1, but you think, I just want more. I want more of the world. I want to see what happens in the next couple of years. So there's like a big, hopeful, inspiring note at the end that's full of potential. And the last one I'll highlight, which is a true standalone, is S. Hati's And the Sky Bled, which is set in it's a climate fantasy, basically, in a world where there's a super fossil fuel that like now powers the world. And it's about extractive industries in the global south. And in many ways, it's a very grim, excellent book. It's a very grim book with a lot of really hard topics. That ends on a bit of a hopeful note, but that closes the world. You know, everything is wrapped up. We know where the characters are now. We've concluded the plot of book 1. There's really there's no plot threads that are opened up into a next story. So it's very, again, it's not totally a happy ending, but it is a very hopeful ending. So it's a very satisfying conclusion that doesn't, you know, shoehorn anyone into like an ending that doesn't fit for their character or the world or anything like that. So it's a good example, I think, of what a true standalone can be in speculative fiction.
Wow, that actually just made me change my answer for one of them.
Ooh, I'm excited for yours.
I love climate fiction a lot, and I mean, how do you make it? I mean, like it inherently has to be kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but when they're done well, they're so compelling, and yeah. Okay, so I'll just do. That will be my honorable mention is a book called Mobility by Lydia Kiesling, and it is so hard to describe. So like my bread and butter, what I love is like what my friends describe as Michael loves books about nothing, and like just nothing's really happening.
Yeah.
But really I like a really slow burn anything. Like it might not be immediately clear what's happening, but the longer you're reading it, you're like, oh my gosh, I know what's happening. I know what's happening. I know what's happening. And it follows this. Oh wait. Oh, it's right here. Well, I'm using it to prop up my computer, but it follows a main character. I believe her name is Bunny, from like the 90s when she's a teenager through our time and beyond. And it's basically about like coming of age in a really horrible time. And the last chapter was such a surprise to me, and I don't want to say too much about it, but it made it very clear what the whole book was about, and really made my stomach hurt. And we talked to her actually about it, and she was like, I really was afraid I wasn't going hard enough. Like I wanted to be more aggressive. I'm worried I'm not aggressive enough. And I was like, oh no, I wanted to throw up. Like you did it. Like, so that's a really great one to study for a intentionally surprising ending that reinforces everything you just read, but also makes you look at it in a new light. But the ones I initially picked were, so this one's all over right now because the movie's about to come out, but Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I think when I was talking about pacing, the ending happens so slowly, and the language is so beautiful, and I don't emote a lot when I read, but I couldn't not cry. It was the most emotional and like satisfying emotional ending that I've ever read. I mean, when I finished it, I was like, this is easily one of the best books, top 5 books of all time now. And a book called Red of the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. That is an ending. This is so hard because it's like, I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, I was trying to walk around that.
But that is a book where once there's like a very close to the end, so I call that the ending, when something is revealed, it makes you realize like, oh my God, right. Like this was never explicit the whole time. And what is revealed like completely changes like the experience of the book. And it was such a surprise because Jacqueline Woodson is not that kind of writer. She's not like trying to shock me necessarily. She's just really trying to write beautifully, which she does. And so I think that's a great one to show that like intentionally leaving things out is different than forgetting to put something in. And my last one is a book called Cloud Cuckoo Land. I cannot remember the author's name right now, but that's another one where the ending is revealed slowly, so that it gives you time to be really surprised by it. And that's a really fun book that really bends a lot of genres as well, that I think also is like, yeah, you, as writers, like truly do whatever you want. Just do it with like
gusto.
Yes, do it with gusto and like confidence, and and you can get away with it, you know.
Yeah, those are my favorite. I feel like increasingly as I like look for, this is just a slight tangent, as I look for new projects, like books where I'm like, I didn't know you could do that, you know, or like, oh, okay, lean into it, go after this thing. That's really, go for it.
Yeah, it's so fun, especially when it's done well. It's like when you're in a reading slump. When I'm in a reading slump, I look for those because they really like. They do make me feel like, oh, this is actually magic. Like writing and reading is an art form, and it is actual magic.
Yeah, I had a client book like that. It's out now, of Monsters in the Mainframes by Barbara Truelove. I read that book and was like, I don't know how to sell this, but it was so much fun. I read the whole thing. Truth be told, I passed on it. I came back to her months later, and I was like, I just can't stop thinking about your book. I had so much fun reading it. Just let me try to sell it, basically.
Wow.
And it's the most fun. It's a spaceship gets revenge on Dracula. Like, that's the concept. Like, what are you gonna do?
Why not?
It's like, why? Okay, sure. I'm along
totally.
for this ride. And that's a great example. I've always want my authors to like lead with their strengths rather than trying to shore up their weaknesses. That's what I always say. Whatever your strength is, whatever the thing is that you're good at, and there's something that you're good at, like, go ask the people who read your writing who are like, this is just what I loved about your writing. Lean into that, form a whole book around that. Just go all in and have fun, because you can really tell when an author's having fun with what they write. And not everything has to be like joyful. It doesn't have to be fun. It can, like you said, it can just be like confidence. There's a thing that they were going after and they really went after it. The reader feels that, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Allegra, this has been so fun. And you have offered so much thoughtful advice. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you don't mind, why don't you share with our listeners where they can find you online?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation. I didn't realize how much I had to say about endings until you brought this up. Everyone can find me on Instagram at Allegra March, Martsch, or just Google me, find me on the Bookends website. If you've got a book to query me with, my wish list's there. I hope I'll connect with some people after this.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Writer's Digest Presents. Visit us online at writersdigest.com and make sure to follow us on social media at Writer's Digest for daily updates on articles, online courses, live events, and more. See you next time.